Hello, I'm going to be sharing with you some good practices for engaging and communicating with students in an online course. There are countless ways to communicate and engage with students, and there are lots of best practices. So, this video by no means covers everything you should do. These are just a few quick starter tips that I'm going to give you to help with engaging and communicating with your students in your online course. Now, unlike a face-to-face class, students don't usually have the same level of engagement in an online class because they're not seeing the instructor in class multiple days a week. So there is an extra leg of effort required teaching online to keep that communication and engagement open. So let's start with the communication aspect. And of course, by communication, I'm referring simply to the interaction with your students on a regular basis. So, what are some tips on establishing and some good practices for communication with your students? The first thing is to establish how communication will be handled in your course. One very important thing with online courses is setting expectations and managing those expectations. So from the very beginning, students need to understand how communication will be handled. So how they should contact you and how they should expect to hear from you. So you may prefer for them to use Canvas inbox. You may prefer for them to use university email, and you may prefer to only contact students at their university email. So the students need to know that. And of course, some instructors rely only on formal methods of communication, and some instructors are okay with more informal methods of communication. Maybe they'll use a different email address, or maybe they'll let students have their number or social media, or whatever communication you're going to do, that needs to be established in the very beginning. And students also need to know, if you're going to communicate with them, should they expect an email, should they expect a Canvas inbox, whatever that method is going to be, that needs to be established in the very beginning so students will know what to be on the lookout for. The next thing is to establish when students should expect a response from you. And of course, this is going back to managing expectations. Students today who use a lot of social media and instant communication expect responses almost immediately. And there have been times when they could send an email to an instructor and get agitated if they don't get a response within an hour. So whatever your timeline is for when you intend to respond to students, they need to know that up front. So if you have a 24-hour window, then it would be good to tell the students, if you send me an email, you can expect a response within 24 hours or within 48 hours or whatever your time frame is. The students need to know that so they don't get agitated when they don't get a response right away. So establish that response time with your students in the beginning so they will know to be on the lookout for that. The next thing is to respond to student communication in a timely manner. So if you tell your students to expect a response from you within 24 to 48 hours, it's important to follow through with that. Another thing, though, is that unlike a face-to-face class, where if a student has a question or a concern, they can just catch the instructor right before class or at the end of class, and they know they're going to have that opportunity to communicate, there's a lot more uncertainty in an online class. If a student runs into an issue with an assignment or a project and they email the instructor to get help and they never get a response back, sometimes that student will either not turn in the assignment or they will turn it in incorrectly, and that can impact their academic performance and that can cause them to be frustrated. And some students even check out of a class because they're not getting responses from their instructor. So it's very important to respond in a timely manner, particularly when there are major assignments and projects that are due. So if a student needs help with something and they're reaching out, be sure to respond to them. Another thing that's very important with communicating with your online students is to communicate regularly and consistently. In a face-to-face class, students are seeing their instructor every single week. In an online class, that needs to be the same. They should constantly be receiving announcements or reminders. There are some students that are very self-sufficient. They know how to stay on top of things. But think about those students who often forget. They have a lot going on in their life. Sometimes they forget they're in an online class. And although it is the responsibility of the student to stay on top of things, we're all happy when we get those little quick reminders. So students need to constantly hear from the instructor of the online course, and it needs to be consistent. So it could be sending out an announcement every week or sending out reminders whenever there is a major assignment or a major project due. And that really does contribute to students' success in the class. And actually, Canvas allows you to schedule weekly announcements. Technology can help with that. If you go to the announcement section in Canvas, I have a screenshot here just to show you. You scroll down, there's a checkbox that says delay posting. You can, on Monday, write an announcement and tell Canvas not to send it out until Wednesday. You could essentially, at the beginning of the semester, create your announcements for the whole semester and just schedule them to post at different weeks. So Canvas does allow you to schedule announcements, and that's a very convenient feature. So students need to hear consistently. That's a major thing in online courses is consistency. Another thing in communication with students is watching for wordiness and obscurity, and this is particularly with assignment and project instructions. Unfortunately, students today have very short attention spans and they don't like to do a lot of reading. That's just the reality of where we are. So when it comes to things like instructions, we need to make sure they are as concise as possible because a lot of times students won't read all of them, and that's the same case with things like announcements and reminders. If it's way too long, it's very likely that they might not read the whole thing, with the exception of those students that are very thorough and want to know everything. Another thing is that students often complain in online courses about instructions not being very clear or them not really knowing exactly what is expected of them. So we need to be careful about obscurity in our assignment instructions and in our announcements. Thinking, is there any way a student might not understand what I'm saying? Is there any way they could be confused by this? Or is there any way they could take this the wrong way? So just thinking about from the student perspective, is there any obscurity that needs to be clarified? So just watching out for too many words and too much obscurity. Okay, now we're going to jump to the engagement aspect, and that's essentially building that connection with students. So aside from the communication, the daily interaction of the technical components of the course, how can we actually get them engaged? Remember, they're not in a face-to-face class, so they're not seeing the instructor every day. They're not able to establish that rapport and that camaraderie. So that has to be supplemented in an online course. So some ways that we can connect with our students and build that engagement. The first thing I want to encourage you to do as an instructor is to use Canvas notifications. This is a feature for both you as the instructor and the students. Canvas has settings where you can be notified of various activities that are going on in the course. I'll show you a screenshot. So a student can put in their email address of choice, they can put in their cell phone number of choice, whatever communication they prefer, and they can receive notifications based on various activities. So if you as the instructor post a new due date, or if you post new grades, or if you send out an announcement, or maybe you make a comment on their assignment, or maybe someone replies to their discussion post, they can receive a notification of that. And they can decide if they want to receive a notification immediately, or if they want a daily summary of all the activity from the course, or if they want it weekly. And what this does is this helps keep the student engaged with the course because they're constantly receiving information about what's going on. It's keeping that course in the forefront of their mind. And then you as the instructor can also use the notifications so that you can be notified if a student sends you a message, or if a student comments on some feedback that you left, if a student posts to a discussion that you created. It helps helps you to know what's going on with the student and keeps the students in the forefront of your mind. So definitely, Canvas notifications is a great tool for engagement. Another thing that's very important is using multimedia. That is, students need to see you and they need to hear you as often as possible, especially in the online environment. In the face-to-face class, they are seeing the instructor every day. They are hearing the instructor. They're able to see their body language and learn their personality. And it's so much more personal when the student has that replicated in an online course. And things such as sending video announcements or using audio to give feedback on assignments helps to increase that engagement. So here's some examples. If you send an announcement in Canvas, there is a feature, and I have it circled in red. There's a little button there that allows you to record a video right there in Canvas. You don't even have to have a video software. And you say, maybe I don't want to appear on camera, but I'm okay with the students hearing my voice. So you can turn the camera off and you can record an audio announcement, particularly if it's long. And it can be, telling the students about something that's coming up that week, whatever it is. But you can do an audio or video announcement. And this is what it looks like. You would just start the recording button and it will record it for you right there in Canvas. The same thing for leaving feedback when grading assignments. In SpeedGrader at the bottom, as you see on my screenshot in the red square, that button down there allows you to record video or audio as a way of giving feedback to a student. And a student may be more likely to listen to your feedback than read a lot of text about your feedback. And this just builds engagement. Them being able to see your face or hear your voice builds that engagement as they're getting that feedback. And while we're talking about feedback, the next thing is to leave timely and meaningful feedback on assignments and projects that the students are turning in. And not necessarily just grades for assignments, but it could be their participation in the course. Anything, the students need and want to hear from you, and it needs to be in a timely manner. If students are turning in multiple assignments week after week after week and they never get any feedback, they'll be more likely to check out and they'll wonder, where did you go? So it's important to give that feedback in a timely manner, but also making sure that feedback is meaningful. Sometimes students don't just want a grade, but they want to know what you think. They want to know how they can improve, or they want to simply hear that they did a good job. And that also helps to build that engagement. Another thing is to provide opportunities for real-time communication. Remember, the students are not in the face-to-face environment where they can simply walk up to the instructor after class or before class to have a conversation. And in the online setting, sending emails is good back and forth, but there does need to be some real-time communication with the student, and that really builds that engagement. So that could be in the form of a phone call, it can be in the form of a Zoom conference meeting, whatever method that is, invite your students to contact you, and you can contact them also, but extend that invitation to engage with real-time communication. And then the last thing is to monitor student participation and progress. A lot of times, students can tend to dip out in an online class, and that may be because they forgot about the online class. Maybe there are a lot of things that are going on, and school is taking a back burner. And sometimes, because they're not in the classroom every day, it simply doesn't take priority. So Canvas does allow you to monitor how often students are logging into the class, how often they are participating. You can quickly see how many assignments a student has missed. It allows you to do that through Canvas Analytics. And it's good to reach out to a student. Hey, I noticed that you haven't logged into the class in a week. I noticed you've missed the last couple of assignments. Is everything okay? That helps to build engagement and rapport with the student. When they see that you cared enough to send them a message, that really makes a difference to them, and it actually does contribute to student success. So just kind of keep an eye on how the students are doing, and every once in a while send them a little message. Okay, so there are lots of other things that you can do to communicate with and engage your students online, but those are just a few practices just to get you started and get you going. And that's all the time I have from now, so go and be amazing.